Here we are with Craig Church and Dan of the Ada County Assessor's Office, and Craig is going to start us off by giving us an upper level highlight. Now these are estimations is the main name of the game here on what we might expect to see with our assessed values this year.
Yeah, so I appraise all the multifamily projects 5 units and above, and they're up for reappraisal for 2021. Assessed value increases are going to be fairly substantial this year. We're looking at a median increase of approximately 27%, an increase average of approximately 44%. Now, kind of why the average is so large is, we work on a 5-year reappraisal cycle. So they were last reappraised in 2016, and then the last 4 years we've trended values. We found over that last 4 years a lot of properties were remodeled without having permits or anything like that. A nice refresh that allowed them to increase their rent substantially. And so we're just kind of catching those on the reappraisal every year. So some of those where their rent's doubled, they're going to see that 40% or more increase in value. Most people kind of expect, they have a good idea where their values are.
So the double-edged sword is what you're talking about here, because A, values have been rising, and B, rents have been rising, and maybe triple-edged C, we've been on kind of autopilot, automated valuation maybe for about 5 years, but you're actually taking a good hard look again this year, and so there's lots of areas to boost a change in value on the assessed value.
Correct, yes. So our primary emphasis is on the income approach. We do a very detailed rent study in the reappraisal year. So we've got, a little over 600 rental comps that we're looking at to establish our market rents, market expenses, and then cap rates. We're seeing those based on pro forma income. We're in the 5 range, like 5 to 5 3/4.
And when you say pro forma, are you kind of looking at meaning market rents? Well, not necessarily what we're getting, but we're saying what we could get?
Exactly, yeah.
Projected market pro forma?
Should be market rents, yeah. So actual rent, there'll be a disconnect. Typically, actual in-place rents will trail the pro forma by quite a bit. Just that time adjustment of when rents come due or when leases come due. You'll have.
And I think you said 1% delta is what you saw?
Yeah, we were kind of 1%, 1.5% a month in value increases. Yeah.
In increases, and then also 1% difference between actual and pro forma rents.
Oh,
cap rates?
In cap rates, yeah. Sorry, yeah. In cap rates, yeah. If you're looking at trailing 12 months, you're roughly 1 percentage point lower on your cap rate versus pro forma cap rate, where everything's available: market rents, market expenses. Yeah.
Okay. So big boosts, and the levy rate, because it's not an assessed value, doesn't necessarily translate directly to what our taxes are. It's part of the equation, which another key part of that equation is those levy rates. And those, you said, were going...
Yeah, well, we don't know what the levy is going to do. We do know that in 2020, due to the CARES Act from Governor Little, applied that CARES Act money to cities that opted into the program, so Meridian and Boise as an example. So the levies were artificially low in 2020 because of that extra money that came in to cover budgets for the cities. So in 2020, for example, in District 1-6, which is the largest district, covers most of Boise, the levy in 2020 was 1.18% approximately, and this year we looked at it assuming the CARES Act money didn't exist, and the levy was 1.3% approximately. So that'll be kind of a starting point for estimating where your taxes will be for the 2021 year. And again, we have a budget-driven system, so what they do is they look at the total taxing needs of the taxing districts in that area, and as a percentage of the total assessed value of that area, and that determines your levy. So we don't speculate on where the levy is going to be at the assessor's office, but we just kind of say historically here's where it was, and then we'll leave it up to the taxpayers to make apply their risk factor to that levy. And we recommend using the 1.3% as a starting point in estimating your levy.
And one thing we didn't talk about when we were talking earlier, all of us, on levy rates, in residential, is that, what number should we be? I mean, that number changes.
Would follow same suit as to what Craig is describing, the levy rate for commercial and residential are the same. As Craig indicated, very difficult to determine exactly what that factor will be. If I was to put a caution out there, or a worst case scenario, might be to use at a minimum what the levy rate was for this year as a possibility, meaning with values increasing the way they are and budgets under the 3% cap growth capability, we may end up very similar to what the levy rates were for 2020. But again, that's just an estimate.
So when we're estimating our taxes, we can look at that last year's levy rate as something to look at that might be in there. And then what I heard, and we can talk about this more, is, really multiplying that by the actual value of the property. The aim is to be 100% on value for assessed values. So if we've had a low assessed value and benefited from that, we need to say we were lucky and that was great. And if suddenly we see a 27 or even a 45% increase, if that final number that we're landing at on an assessed value is accurate, that's not a grounds for an appeal on taxes if the value's correct.
Correct.
Because that's your goal, is to be right on, and sometimes we've benefited from values a little bit lower, but for the most part, last year you were pretty stinking close to full values, and that's the goal.
Yeah. We were roughly 96% or 94% of market value, which we're going to have to try and recover on the residential side this year, as well as any appreciation or market growth that occurred during the 2020 market year.
And market growth, you're talking about time adjusting comps based on, when you're appealing or when you're looking at a value, that's the January 1st value. So there's a lot of time adjusting there. And I thought it was really interesting what you were saying is what general numbers you were using for time adjusting.
Yeah, from January through September, we're estimating that to be roughly between 1.5% to 1.7% per month. Moving into October, November, and December, and fourth quarter of 2020, that could be closer to 2.5% per month to get us to a full market value on January 1st of 2021.
And then Q1 of this year?
The analysis is still out there, but very well could be close to 3% per month.
Yeah, so that spike is real. What we're hearing about in the news is real, and it's that reality is not going to just fade away when it comes time for our assessed values. We might get to see it firsthand, all the equity, hopefully, that we have.
Well, and if there's any safety net there, is that while market values can appreciate or decline 20, 30, 40% relative to what the market conditions are, the budgets are capped at a 3% plus new growth on an annual basis. And so maybe better explain that would be last year's budget plus new growth, and adding 3% to that would be the maximum that those budgets can grow in any one calendar year.
Right, so even as we're being taxed, being exposed
Market
to all this
value.
growth, those budgets they're not endless in how much they can go up, so they can't suck up too much money, even if the area is growing.
Correct.
I did not say that any better than you just did. Much worse, actually. But that brings us to the main point, or a real good point, is if we're upset by what we see, the number one way an property owner can get involved in this process is going to the budget. That's something that we can weigh in on, is those budget hearings.
Yeah, and we encourage people to actually go to those and voice their concerns over what's happening with the budgets. And if you're concerned with the assessed value of your property, in the upper right-hand corner of your assessment notice, you'll have the appraiser's name, their email address, and phone number. So if you think your property is assessed too high, definitely contact your appraiser as soon as possible and discuss the value with them.
And it's pretty great that locally speaking, there's that step one. Is we don't have to go straight to the formal process in writing, but we can reach out to that person on that appraised document, that notice document, and it's usually recommended to do so, to do an informal appeal, where informal still means having data and points to present, but you get to present them directly to your assessor.
Yeah, and that phone number is direct to their desk. I mean, that's you're getting right to the person that's directly responsible for that valuation that's on the assessment.
And as an agent with Swope Investment Properties, that's where a lot of times I end up getting involved in the process. Is people call me and say, "Well,
How can that be?
oh my gosh, how can this be?" And then I can say, "Well, actually, that looks like a legit value." Or in some cases, it's not. In some cases there's an outlier, and we can look and see if there's data to support that, and then help give the comps that will make the argument.
Yeah.
So big increases. Did you say the increases? Did we?
No, we didn't really go over that too much. On the residential side, value increases are going to range between 10 and 40%. Certainly, there are going to be some outliers in that mix as well, with a median value increase of between 28 and 28%, or between 25 and 28%.
That's the median, so that's the average.
Yep.
So
Yep.
a lot of people are going to be in that range.
Yep.
25 to 28.
Predominantly, that's where the market's going to be. For income properties, duplexes, the range is still about the same, that 10 to 40%, but the median's going to be closer to that 30 percentile range. Fourplexes are going to be probably 22 to 25, still in that same range, 10 to 40. And triplexes will be in that 20 to 25 range as well. And again, I put that range out there, 10 to 40, because we do have those extremes. But again, the median or the mode is going to be closer to that 20 to 25% range, and certainly for duplexes and single families, you're going to be closer to that 30% for duplexes and 25 to 28% for single families. Pretty extreme.
Yeah. So homeowners exemptions, we'll want to make sure we file those if we need them, or if anyone's eligible for the circuit
breaker.
Mm-hmm.
The homeowner's exemption changed this year, where you can file any point during the year and qualify for the homeowner's exemption, whereas before you had to file before April 15th to get it for that particular calendar year. They didn't change the circuit breaker that I'm aware of, so that you still have the April 15th for their cutoff as far as being able to file for the circuit breaker.
Any other major highlights we should let people know this year?
I can think of.
Well, it's kind of a frightening year, just with the massive increases in assessed values for multifamily this year. It's kind of mimicking what's happening in the residential market. There's no inventory out there, and that's kind of helping push the prices.
I think I heard someone say it's going to be a bloodbath.
Well, certainly going to be a lot of sticker shock.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken me 90 days to get over the sticker shock, and I'm still probably not over it.
Yeah.
Because I still see it every day. And for a lot of folks, they don't see it until they get that assessment notice in the mail, and hard to not be aware of it, but may not be aware of it. And again, the focus is primarily on the market value of the property, and is it within reason in that plus or minus 10% variance? Would be the kicker or the driving factor as to whether or not, in the owner's opinion, that it might deserve a phone call or a follow-up review.
So in summary, all this news we've been seeing about the housing market and experiencing and watching, this is one of the ways it's literally coming on home to us. This is where we bring it home, and it's our assessed values, and we'll be finding out what they are real soon here.
Yeah.
Yep.
End of May, just in time for Memorial Day.
And what was the last day to appeal was June?
Oh, 4th Monday of June.
28th, I think.
28th, was it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Last day for an informal appeal.
Yeah, anything after that point.
Last day for a formal appeal.
Oh, last day for a formal appeal.
Yeah,
For informal, ASAP is the word.
yes.
Okay.
As soon as you get the notices, if you think the value's out of line, talk to Stacy or give us a call afterwards, and we can discuss the value with you.
Guess that covers
That's
it.
good. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you,
Yeah,
Craig.
No worries.